you left the BBC. You had Media.info for a while now. Where did Podnews come into it?
So, I started working as a radio consultant, and I still go and talk at lots of conferences across the world, and helping companies about what the future is and where the future is going in terms of radio. And I went to the Worldwide Radio Summit, which is a thing that happens every year in Los Angeles. And I kind of joke in that it's a bit like, Worldwide Radio Summit is as worldwide as the worldwide, baseball championships are. It's not that worldwide, but nevertheless, there are a few people that come from overseas. And I was chatting with a friend of mine in the bar after the first day, and we were talking about podcasting. And he said, what really annoys me, this is an American friend of mine, what really annoys me is there's nowhere to go to get news about podcasting. There's plenty of places to go about radio, but there's nowhere to go to get news about podcasting.
And what year was this?
And that was 2015.
Okay, all right.
And so I thought, well, that's interesting. And I've been kind of doing something around this, the future of radio as a newsletter for a while. So I understand how that bit works. I understand how the internet works. I understand how podcasting works. Maybe this is something for me. And so about 3 months later, I'd done a few trial runs in terms of workflow to work out when I could fit it into my day, because that's an important part of doing this.
Yeah.
And working out what the quickest way of doing it could be, because I'd already learnt from Media.info that the way that you can produce great value isn't to rewrite press releases as articles. That's a mug's game, but is to actually link out to places to help people find the news, and you are compiling essentially a links list every day.
Yeah, which is what we were chatting about before we started recording. That's, I think, the real value in it.
Yeah, because actually, instead of just seeing somebody trying to rewrite a press release and really not adding that much to it, actually linking to the press release or copying and pasting the press release and being really open and honest that that's what you're doing is actually just as valuable, because you're actually, linking somebody to the full amount of detail that company has given you. And occasionally, yes, by all means, write a full article about X, Y, and Z that's going on. But your main focus is to curate that list of things which are going on that you should know about.
Yeah.
So I sat there and I sort of played around with the timings, worked out what would work for me in terms of a daily newsletter, and then put that live at the end of May in 2015.
May 2015. And how long after that did the podcast come along?
And so the podcast, people were saying Podnews, so it's a podcast, right? And I was saying, no, it's a newsletter. And they said, why don't you make it into a podcast? And I was thinking, well, A, because that would be a lot of work. And B, because it's a links list. It's a list literally linking out to interesting stories that I have found that day. You can't really make that into a podcast. Well, it turns out you can. But it's a slightly different experience. And so the point of the podcast is to direct people to the newsletter, is to remind people that the newsletter exists. It's another touch point out to people. And it is there. It's a 2-minute news briefing. It's available on, smart speakers, which actually is where quite a lot of the traffic comes from.
Really? Which speaker in particular at the moment?
Both Google and Amazon, but Google more so, I think. But yeah, and so it sits there as something which is reminding people that the newsletter exists, helping people find the newsletter in a different, in a different experience. And again, it comes from my radio days of talking to radio people and saying, you have some great content. You need to really get the most amount of value out of this content. So don't just broadcast it once.
Yeah.
Broadcast it more than once. Stick it online. Do a transcript. Send the transcript out to the local press. Do as much as you can if you've got some great content that you actually have there. And so I'm hopefully doing a bit of that for myself there.
I think so. I think, an example with ours, like, you just got to document as much as possible. And I remember We had one of the gentlemen, Courtney from Nearly Media, on. He was talking about the fact that you've got to get the video, you've got to get audio, create promo clips and all that sort of stuff. I think that's really what major media organisations and the best creators do really, really, really well. They create that sort of pinnacle, like a pyramid in a way, that base, and then things that sprout up beneath that, which is really important.
It's massively important. I mean, if you think of a radio station of, Hamish and Andy being a great experience of some really good Australian former radio presenters, but nevertheless radio presenters. And you look at what they did, and yes, they made a great radio show every single afternoon, but they also made great social media content that they shared. They made great experiences which you could actually, use in different ways. It was a really good example of something that everything would pull you back to the radio show, but there was lots of other stuff there as well. And I think, anybody that can make the most out of the content that they have and get the best value out of it, is really important. Yeah.